Evicted, The Struggle for the Right to Vote by Faye Duncan, art by Charlie Palmer. Big Man Blues. The year was 1954. James Jr. learned about love and loss before he learned to read. His mama and daddy would work all week and drink all Friday night. Before leaving her children alone, Dorothy would kiss James Jr. and say, "Take care of baby Ann." James Jr. was only 5 and baby Ann was 3 when James Sr. would pat the boy's head on Friday nights and say, "You are big man now." Then the parents would hitch a ride from Fayette County to Beale Street in Memphis. And when baby Ann cried from hunger, James Jr. fed her day-old biscuits. When baby Ann cried from fear because the house was cold and dark, Jr. rocked her in his arms until she fell asleep. One Friday night in July turned into Sunday morning. Their parents had not returned. Baby Ann lay on the patchwork quilt and groaned from one of her headache spells. "I want Mama," she cried. "Mama gone," huffed Junior as he turned to face the wall. Who could he call for help with no phone in the Cropper shack? The boy prayed for Uncle Hartman, his daddy's brother, to knock on the door. He prayed for Aunt Minnie, his uncle's wife, to come in with plates of food. Rap, tap, tap, his grandmother knocked. A grumbling in her feeble mind made her remember the children. She stood on the porch in a blue work jacket and mismatched brogan boots. She wore a crumpled old church hat with a silver cross around her neck. Golden was her name. When Mama Golden opened the unlatched door and shuffled toward the bed, James Jr. shot up to hug her with all his strength. Baby Ann stretched out her arms for Golden to pick her up. Golden helped the children button their clothes over frayed pajamas. She tied their stuffed-toed shoes, and they all sat on the bed, watching black storm clouds gather and waiting on a savior. Golden could not tell the future through the cracks in her feeble mind, but when it came to Hartman Jameson, her understanding was clear as rain. Her oldest son would search the country roads for her and receive the children. He would feed the lambs, raise them up, and love them like a father. The Legend of Burton Dodson. James Jr. understood that most bedtime stories don't carry a bit of truth. But, according to his Uncle Hartman, the legend of Burton Dodson was a Fayette County fact. Reverend Dodson was a sharecropper back in 1940. It was rumored a white farmer challenged him about a woman they both loved. After Dodson served a lashing and left the farmer in the dirt, 100 white men surrounded his shack to lynch his black body. Dodson ordered his brood of children to fall to the ground. Then he kicked the door open and ran through the night, firing bullets to protect his life. The white mob shot guns from bushes, trees, and the roof of an old smokehouse. Burton Dodson was hit 5 times, but his quick feet never stumbled. The preacher bolted from Fayette County and ran 50 miles to Memphis, where he hitched a ride to Chicago. Then he settled down in East St. Louis, Illinois. Olin B. Burrow, a white deputy sheriff, was killed in the wild crossfire. The mob pinned his murder on Dodson, who never ran in Olin's direction. "How did that coon get away?" marveled men in the mob. Burton Dodson lived proud and free for the next 18 years. And as the legend of his miraculous survival spread across the cotton fields, black children in Fayette County would boast and brag, "I'm bad, like Burton Dodson." Authorities captured Dodson in 1958 and shuttled him back to Tennessee. He stood trial for murder in 1959 at the dusty Somerville courthouse. For the first time ever, a black lawyer tried a case in Fayette County, and black farmers filled the seats to watch J.F. Estes defend Burton Dodson. Estes searched the court to pick black jury members, but most were not registered voters, and they could not serve as jurors. Farmer John McFerrin, who had piercing gray eyes, sat in court for the entire trial. The black laborer bristled when the jury sent Burton Dodson to jail. John, with his steely gaze, caught a vision during the trial. He huddled black men into a corner and boomed, "Our justice is the ballot box." And while Burton Dodson served his sentence for a crime that he did not do, John McFerrin drafted a plan to register black voters and start a freedom movement. John the Revelator. Burton Dodson was famous Fayette County lore, while John McFerrin lived on the outskirts of Somerville as an ordinary man. He was a farmer, husband, and daddy to Little John and Jacqueline. Born in 1924, John quit 8th grade when his daddy took sick. He put aside dreams of building motors and fixing cars to help his mama run their cotton farm. Then came World War II. The Army drafted John, and he helped America and the Allied forces defeat Adolf Hitler. In the war, John used his small, quick body to move weapons to the front line. He raised bridges over rivers and lakes. Nobody sent Allied troops to help John overthrow Jim Crow when he returned to Fayette County in 1945. McFerrin is a noble name, like Kennedy and King. It can mean liberator, activist, or inspired revelator. Fayette County denied black citizens voting rights from the days of Reconstruction until the Dodson case, when John answered freedom's call. He formed the Fayette County Civic and Welfare League, FCCWL, and served as its president. With guidance from Attorney Estes and donations from black landowners, like his best friend Hartman Jameson, John and the League drafted a charter to wield collective power and increase black voters in Fayette County. Urging black Americans to reject segregation and register to vote was revolutionary in the rural South. "Reckless!" cried Viola McFerrin. She feared for her husband's life as John crisscrossed white people's land to recruit black tenants to join his struggle. Everybody in Fayette County heard whispers about some loud firecracker visiting cropper shacks and pushing black folks to vote. Nobody expected such sparks from John, who quit grade school and was no polished talker. The Ghost of Thomas Brooks. My talk ain't polished. Listen anyway. This is my body, battered and bruised. See my bulging eye. Call me Tom Brooks. Here and not here. I am the wind. Click, click. A cloud of grinning white folks snap my picture. Kodak Brownie cameras cost $2. It is April 1915. My cracked black boots and broken black limbs dangle from the trestle of a railroad bridge in Somerville. I killed a rich white farmer and his helper, they say. They say so much that ain't true. Click, click. Pictures tell the story as buzzing white children chirp with glee. They is so happy to miss a day of school and dance in circles at the hanging of a negra, me. My story ain't polished. Read it anyway. Study my broken body like a book. Remember my blues, here and not here. I am wind, rain, and a beloved son. Colored folk was the majority in Fayette County, Tennessee. We stayed on the land and picked cotton after slavery days. We was cheated paupers in plantation shacks, sharecroppers. Colored men did not vote in 1915 or beyond. Not in Fayette County. My muted tongue and broken black body is a message down the dusty tracks of time. What is the reason for my wounded soul? Go make some white folk mad or do good, like open a grocery, learn yourself to read, or cast your ballot as a first-class citizen. It ain't no secret. They will kill you. Hartman goes to war. Hartman Jameson heard stories about lynching from his granddaddy, Albert Geeter. When Hartman turned 6 in 1931, he learned how Tom Brooks died on a county bridge. When he turned 18, Hartman left Fayette County to fight in World War II. When he turned 20, Albert Geeter died. The war ended, and Hartman returned home, an American with no vote. Hartman married Minnie Harris in 1948. She was Viola McFerrin's older sister. Hartman loved Minnie's sweet voice and her delight in books and learning. He hoped for a child to inherit her ways. In the meantime, the great tower of a farmer raised cattle, grew a rainbow of vegetables, and helped his pal, John McFerrin, charter the Fayette County Civic and Welfare League in 1959. Why stand with John and his freedom-hungry league? Hartman was a Navy veteran who wanted to exercise his voting rights. There was also that distressing matter of his adopted children, James Jr. and baby Anne. Anne's headache spells persisted, and she died in 1956. Her death shook Hartman. And with his little girl gone, there's nothing else to lose and everything to gain when he signed up for John McFerrin's civil rights struggle. Fatherhood made Hartman see himself with brand new eyes. How could he vote for America in World War II and not fight for James Jr.'s right to vote? "Let me tell you something," Hartman would declare over dinner. "A man and woman don't have no country if they don't have no vote." Seated around the table with Hartman, Minnie, and Mama Golden, James Jr. would register his uncle's sharp gaze. The boy could offer no reply, as the death of baby Anne had snatched his voice away. And to compound his grief, Junior's longing for his real mama and daddy cast a permanent shadow of gloom over his golden face. Minnie Jameson was no war veteran. She went to college and worked as a teacher. When Minnie joined the league and registered her name to vote, the Fayette County School Board canceled her job. Losing employment changed Minnie. Her sweet purr turned into a fighting spirit. And while Hartman bellowed over bowls of steamy collards and yams about Negro voting rights, Minnie would declare, "That school board can take my job, but they cannot take my self-respect." The Fayette County Civic and Welfare League voted Minnie secretary. Hartman served as treasurer. James Jr. was a quiet son who listened with his eyes during loud league rallies at Mount Olive Church. Since Minnie and Hartman never conceived a baby, James Jr. was their only child. And as the couple raised their voices at the late-night rallies, freedom was their battle cry. The league members' strategy was to canvass the 15 county districts and enlist potential black voters. The strategy worked. Droves of black men and women lined up to register at the Somerville courthouse. Wednesday was registration day. Like Minnie, black teachers risked termination by the white school board when they registered, and black sharecroppers lost wages as they left the fields to be greeted by gangs of white folk who cursed, threw rocks, and poured hot coffee in black faces to suppress their will to vote. During a primary election in 1959, white poll workers told Hartman and John it was an all-white election and no colored could vote. White workers blocked the men from entering the polls. With haste, Attorney Estes helped the League file a federal lawsuit for illegal treatment and obstruction of black voters. The League's bravery prompted some white landowners to retaliate. After cotton was harvested that fall, they evicted registered black tenants from the land. Entire families were forced out of their homes when black parents registered to vote in Fayette County. James Jr. did not fear eviction. Minnie and Hartman owned their farm in a 4-room house with electricity, a telephone, and a TV, but no indoor plumbing. The isolated property sat in the woods, 1 mile off Highway 76 in the Wilson community. While his shelter was sure, James Jr. worried for his friends. He was especially fearful for Jo Nell Johnson, a girl in his 5th grade class. Her parents had 7 children and worked for a white landlord with an evil reputation. One evening, as Junior walked the lonely path home from school and whizzing snow cleaved to his hat and coat, he followed rabbit tracks along the trail and posed a question to the listening trees. If the Johnsons go register, what's going to happen to poor Jo Nell? The Good Shepherd. Courage awakened many hearts after the League filed a lawsuit. During one registration day, 1,000 black sharecroppers converged on the courthouse wearing Sunday clothes. They rose before daylight to wait in line for many hours. The White Citizens Council, a group of segregationists, used economic reprisals to punish these men and women who added their names to the voting roster. The White Citizens Council made a blacklist of registered black voters and shared it widely. Pandemonium whipped through Fayette County like a tornado as white merchants copied the list and denied groceries and gasoline to registered black customers. White doctors denied medicine to black patients. White insurance agents canceled policies held by black landowners with houses and cars. Farmers like Jo Nell's parents were evicted from shacks already inhabitable with holes in the walls. Shepherd Papa Tallis was one of the few black landowners in Fayette. With 200 acres, he invited displaced families to pitch Army surplus tents in his field on Old Mackin Road. Gertrude Beasley was an elderly black woman who hosted families on her Fayette County property along Highway 57. Mary and Early B. Williams and their son and 3 daughters were the first family to move into a tent on Papa Tallis's land. They were evicted from the Leatherwood farm at Christmas time in 1960. Mary and her family slept in coats as they braved the bitter winter. In January 1961, there was a rapid clip of evictions in Fayette and nearby Haywood County as more black tenants registered. 700 black families in both counties combined were removed from farms where they had lived and worked for 2 and 3 decades. Evictions sparked a great migration of families from Fayette County to bunk in crowded shacks with kin or live in tents with mud under their feet. While Papa Tallis could not lodge every homeless family, he added to his property 13 canvas tents purchased from an anonymous white merchant. 60 children lived on his land, with 30 mothers, fathers, grandparents, uncles, and aunts. During TV broadcasts and in national newspapers, the makeshift community was called Tent City. People in tents. A caravan of sharecroppers moved to the tents, bringing their possessions on the back of clunking trucks and mule-drawn wagons. They settled in Tent City with yelping stray dogs, wood-burning stoves, pot-belly wash kettles, oil lamps, patchwork quilts, and broken chests of drawers filled with knick-knack memories. The white tent merchant required anonymity for his safety, while families in the tents owned blacklisted names like Williams, Turner, Trotter, Junkins, Fraser, and Mason. Their hiding place was a cross of unmerited suffering. John McFerrin needed help to spread the dire news. Ernest Withers photographed the evicted families. John wanted eyes to witness the pain of black folks struggling to live and vote in Fayette County, USA. Click, 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 click. Mary, Early B, and their doe-eyed babies did not smile. Standing at their tent in scrubbed, second-hand clothes, they were a weary people, poor, proud, and persevering. A Rolleiflex camera captured their courage in black and white. When Viola McFerrin visited with Mary in the tents, her steadfast fortitude mirrored Viola's rising commitment. And when the New York Post sent a black man to report the story, Viola certainly had to marvel at John's rousing movement. The Federal Justice Department sent FBI agents to investigate the area's long tradition of voter suppression. Fayette County News reached Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Pictures of Tent City crossed President Kennedy's desk. John and Viola felt responsible for people in the tents. The sharecroppers did not register to be put outdoors. Now their hungry families needed food and clothing. The McFerrins spoke across the nation, seeking aid. Click, 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 click. A surge of publicity drew more reporters to Fayette County. Ebony magazine printed a pictorial exposition, and Dr. King mailed the League a letter with a large donation. President Kennedy sent large trucks loaded with food. Click, 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 click. Pictures of Mary and Early B made the papers. John McFerrin's crusade was a lead story, and as the news traveled around the globe, black and white allies joined John's struggle. John and Viola. America followed the McFerrins in the headlines as help arrived in great numbers. Volunteer carpenters laid wood floors in the tents. Labor unions, like the United Packing House Workers, donated food. Virgie Hordenstein of Operation Freedom gave loans to registered black landowners denied credit at the banks. And when a plea for aid was printed in Jet magazine, shoes, clothes, and money arrived from faraway states like California, New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania, and Illinois. John and attorney J.F. Estes could never agree on a system to receive and distribute the donations. John broke ties with Estes in 1961 and changed his group's name to the original Fayette County Civic and Welfare League, OFCCWL. The split with Estes did not shatter John's vision, and as registered black voters increased, so did incidents of violence. White terrorists fired guns at Williams's tent on a frosty winter night. A bullet missed their sleeping baby and hit Early B in the arm. John's family was a target too. White men threw bricks into his home. They chased his mother, Estella McFerrin, off the road, and the aging woman wrecked her car in a ditch. In each case, white culprits were identified, but never charged. Robert McFerrin was John's baby brother. The college graduate moved away to avoid physical harm and economic retaliation. With Robert gone, John rented his brother's grocery and gas station to serve Fayette County's black community. White merchants in Fayette County would not sell John gas or food to stock his store. Throughout the week, he drove his 1955 Thunderbird with a set of 4-barreled carburetors to Memphis. There, he purchased meat, milk, and bread, On his drive home, John zipped and zoomed around county roads, as white locals plotted unsuccessfully to ambush his car. Viola married John in 1950, the year she graduated high school. She never dreamed that loving him would put her life in danger. During the voting struggle, she worried especially about the safety of her children. But with each morning, she knelt in prayer. Her determination strengthened, and Viola was unflinching. She told John, "We are in this fight together." Like a good soldier, Viola went on to organize bins of donated food and clothing in the groceries storage room. With Minnie at her side, the sisters distributed the donations to long lines of needy families from Tent City and Fayette County towns like Oakland, Moscow, and Rossville. Hordes of reporters traveled to Somerville's three-way stop on Highway 195. Here, at McFerrin's grocery store, they raised their tape recorders and asked how an uneducated farmer and his wife learned to lead a movement. John would clear the phlegm from his throat and pull a tape recorder to his lips. "Ain't no schools for this," he would say. "We have been trained under pressure." Charlie Outsider. A white student from Oberlin College canceled summer fun when he read the news about Tent City. Charlie Butts packed his bags and drove all night from Ohio to Tennessee. On his arrival, he worked as a League volunteer. Charlie studied the grassroots movement through the lens of his college books. Something was missing. Many in the Black community did not own telephones, and the League needed some way to share urgent information about protest marches, voting, and late-night rallies. One morning, as the two broke Jim Crow traditions and worked together in the League's rickety headquarters, Charlie asked Minnie, "Would you consider writing a weekly newsletter?" Minnie had no objection. "Who will teach me how?" she asked. The League's donated mimeograph machine was a mystery to her. "I will." Charlie pointed both thumbs at himself, and for the duration of his stay, he taught Minnie how to type, make mimeocopies, and publish the League link. When Charlie returned to college, Minnie carried on as lead link editor, and 2 years later, good news arrived. Under John Doerr, the Justice Department's Civil Rights Division filed a lawsuit to block white landowners from evicting black sharecroppers because they had registered to vote. A consent agreement was filed, and white landowners agreed to stop evictions in July 1962. Peals of praise rang from tent to tent as families gathered to read the League link in the summer of 1962. A breeze of relief seemed to blow across the county. No new families moved into the tents, and several white merchants resumed business and services to black registered voters. With the consent agreement filed, white landowners began to purchase expensive farm equipment to avoid hiring a cheap labor force that pressed for equal rights. With no new opportunities to work, one by one, tent families began to pack up their memories and move to nearby counties like Shelby, Chester, and Madison. While Papa Tallis pulled down tents, John McFerrin made big plans to pick a black political candidate and help that candidate win. Big Man Speaks. The year was 1963. As John McFerrin searched for brave candidates to run in the Fayette County elections, Dr. King marched on Washington, D.C. to terminate Jim Crow laws and demand better schools, jobs, and housing for every American citizen. James Jr., with his sad-eyed smile, worked the counter at McFerrin's grocery in 1963. Each day after school, he furtively feasted on the political talk of the chatty customers while he bagged their groceries and replied only with a "please come again" or "thank you very much." The quiet teenager did not talk civil rights with Hartman, Minnie, or Mama Golden, but he perceived the changing times. The evidence was on TV. He saw black children march for equal rights in Birmingham. He saw dogs attack the children. He saw the children put in jail. And in 1964, he saw President Lyndon B. Johnson sign the Civil Rights Act to abolish segregation with Dr. King at his side. 50 white college kids from New York found their way to Fayette County in the summer of 1964. Working with fiery League members like Square Mormon in his porcupine hat and Maggie Horton with her megaphone voice, Cornell University students trudged across cotton fields to encourage voting in the black community. With their help, the League also organized a campaign to re-elect Reverend June Doughty, a black man, for tax assessor, and L.T. Redfern, a white man, for sheriff. Black Fayette County voters went to cast their ballots by the thousands on August 6, 1964. Official poll watchers saw white locals stuff the ballot boxes with countless illegal votes. The results? Preacher Doughty and L.T. Redfern both suffered defeat, but the League moved forward. Their circle of allies grew, and more college activists descended on Fayette County in the spring of 1965. It was the month of May when University of Chicago students joined the League in mass demonstrations. They marched through downtown Somerville to denounce lingering evils of segregation in Fayette schools, restaurants, and the local movie theater. With his quiet manner and rail-thin frame, nobody invited James Jr. to march or carry a protest sign. One day, a fire in his feet lifted him from his old wooden desk and stack of tattered books. James Jr. left school and ran for downtown Somerville to join the League and college kids. He heard footsteps and singing before he reached the crowd. "Woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. Walking and talking with my mind stayed on freedom. Singing and praying with my mind stayed on freedom. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah." Gloom and grief took flight on wings as James Jr. marched and opened his mouth to sing. Would he be punished for skipping school? Whatever the price, he was willing to pay it. Golden. James Jr. remembered 1965 with a furious clarity. He recalled sitting on the couch beside Grandma Golden. Together, they watched the news as white state troopers in Selma brutalized nonviolent activists on the Edmund Pettus Bridge. John Lewis, a future U.S. congressman, led the charge as 600 students, clergy, and church folk demanded unhindered voting rights for all American citizens. Junior and Golden winced at the bloody news footage. Click, click. Photojournalists like Flip Schulk and Bruce Davidson put their lives in danger, too, on the Edmund Pettus Bridge. They captured portraits of terror with Nikon and Leica cameras. Black and white voices raged at the sight of helpless, beaten bodies. The blood that spilled in Selma awakened sleepy public opinions. Click, click. Photographs and newsreels needed no exposition. James Jr. and Golden exchanged no commentary. They were connected souls who shared a silent understanding. Selma was a growing seed, a sprawling voter movement planted first in 1959 across the cotton fields of Fayette County. Finally, to serve Black America the unfettered freedom to vote, President Lyndon Johnson signed the Voting Rights Act of 1965. This law changed the face of local, state, and national elections as Black Americans voted in record numbers and won political seats. Four Black men and two Black women won Fayette County posts in 1966. They were voted to serve on the county board with 30 magistrates. The Black magistrates were disrespected for the full length of the term, while each one served with dignity and a golden crown of courage. As he considered the changing seasons and spirit of the times, James Jr. asked himself, "What is my contribution?" He wanted to make a difference, like Hartman and Minnie. He wanted to offer some great sacrifice, like John and Viola. Junior took action without parental prodding in the fall of 1966. He boarded a yellow school bus to integrate Fayette County High. He expected shiny desks and books served with loud, stinging threats. Change agents endure hardships, and Junior embraced the challenge. White students with racist views troubled him with menacing taunts. They assaulted him and his Black classmates with pushing in the halls. Junior was pelted with pennies and nickels each day he rode the bus. He studied his books, passed his tests, and graduated in 1967. Click, click! James Jr. is a farmer now, with grandbabies at his feet. He pulls pictures from a worn shoebox to recall the Fayette movement. His lambs ask constant questions about who, what, when, and why. And James Jr. speaks with authority. His memory is an open book. He says the past is the present, and it is urgent they understand. Every life is a battlefield, and freedom is a golden prize. Here's the epilogue and a timeline. Here's a resource guide with books of general interest, music, documentary films and websites, and places to visit. Here's a bibliography. The end.